Howdy, howdy, and welcome. It is Workshop Wednesday, and today is actually Johnny Appleseed Day, believe it or not. So if Johnny Appleseed's your guy, like this is your day. Maybe it's, just because you like apples, you could probably celebrate for the same reason. We are going to talk today about how traffic attribution works. This is a strategy session. With Workshop Wednesdays, we have strategy sessions. We do beginners events where we call them Getting Started. We've got Beyond the Basics for the advanced implementation. We've got What's New, so you can get caught up in updates. And we've got strategy session. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So how traffic attribution works. For those of you who maybe aren't on the implementation end, but you need to figure out strategy. You want to know how all this stuff gets put together and what it all means. My name is Chris Mercer. I do go by Mercer. I'm the co-founder here at measurementmarketing.io, and you can see our content on such platforms as Digital Marketer, Conversion XL, Social Media Examiner, Seriously Simple Marketing, and others around the web. 5 pillars of measurement marketing, a very important feature we like to cover each and every workshop, and that helps you to put this information into context. So the very first pillar is planning. As a measurement marketer, you must plan. You got to think what questions you're going to ask, what are you going to need to actually get the answers, what are you going to do with those answers once you actually have them. All of that stuff goes into planning. Then there's build out. So that's actually using tools like Tag Manager and Google Analytics, maybe Facebook Analytics now, to actually get that information recorded. Once it's all being recorded, then you build your reports, right? Then the reports come, and you're maybe using built-in reports in Google Analytics. You might use Data Studio, maybe even a spreadsheet or two. Once you have your numbers, once you've got those reports, then you begin to forecast. So when you have your benchmarks, you know, or hopefully will know, what will be coming up in your near future, and you can begin to guess, make an educated guess as to what's going to happen. That's your forecast. Then you measure against your forecast, and that is optimization. So that's where all of that comes through. All right. So with all of these workshops, one thing very important, make sure that you do that. And how traffic attribution works is what we're about to get into. But remember, going back to this one thing concept, these workshops can be really overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff that's here, and it's really hard to wrap your head around everything that we talk about. So one thing is all you really need to grab. Just grab one idea, practice that, then you come back, watch the workshop again, get something else from it. That's sort of how these things work. It's the best way to absolutely use them. Okay, without further ado, strategy session, how traffic attribution works. Let's go ahead and dive in. So I'm going to pull up our Lucidchart because I love Lucidchart, and this is a super useful diagram. So let's talk about how traffic attribution works. And we're going to talk about this in terms of Google Analytics, and I'm also going to talk about it in terms of Facebook because I know that's one of the most popular traffic sources out there. But remember, you can insert Google Ads, LinkedIn, whatever ad platform it is. They all sort of work similarly to how Facebook works. So we're going to really use those two examples. So let's pretend we've got user. A user comes in, and the platform itself is going to assign them a random ID. So we're just going to call it user 123. So we've got user 123 here. Then they have a visit, right? They come to our site, and maybe they were searching for a problem that they had, and they wanted to find some answers. So they go into Google search and they search for something, and then your blog post comes up as a possible answer. So what happens is in Google Analytics, you would see Google search. It would technically say Google organic, but it would be a Google search would be the traffic source, and it would come to the blog post, right? It would show you that this blog post was the lander, and then maybe in that same session, which is just a visit, okay, think about this, how we're kind of using a little bit of the jargon here in analytics, but I want you used to that, because if you keep calling it a visit and it's not called a visit in Google Analytics, it makes it harder to use Google Analytics. So we're going to call it a session, but remember, it's really just a visit. So session number 1 here, Google search is what caused it to happen. The blog post, this first blog post would be the landing page. And then as they click through to the next blog post, it would be another page. And if you went into Google Analytics and said, hey, what pages are people seeing that come from Google search? Remember in Google, it would be called Google Organic. But you could look for Google search results and it would say, oh, well, people saw this blog post and this blog post. And you say, which one was the lander? It would say this one. And you say, which one is the exit page? It would say this one. So that's how, roughly speaking, analytics is sort of tracking everything. And everything's contained in this nice little visit. So customer went to Google, they searched for something, they found your blog post that started the session, and then analytics attributed that traffic source to this blog post and every other blog post that they saw, in this case, just one other one, and then they close the session and move on. Okay, so far so good. Now session number 2 happens. Session number 2 here, let's say you had a Facebook campaign where you started retargeting people who read your blog. Perfect opportunity, right? So we're going to use Facebook, and we're retargeting with an ad, a paid ad on Facebook. And that retargeting is retargeting people who saw blog posts previously, no matter where they came from. Great. So now that works. Let's pretend that works. And that same user 123, comes back for session number 2. This time, what started the session? What caused the visit to happen? Facebook retargeting ad did, right? So Facebook retargeting. So then let's say you send them to a blog post. Maybe you're doing like a content marketing play. And in that blog post, there's an offer to take the next natural step for whatever the thing is that you're selling. So they click on the blog post. They're like, yeah, tell me about your offer. They click on the offer page and they see that, but they don't buy. Okay. They don't buy. Maybe they become a lead or something, but they don't buy. Okay. So let's pretend they became a lead. So then that session closes. Okay. So session number 1, Google search caused it. Session number 2, Facebook caused it. So if you said, hey, what were the pages associated with Facebook? It would be this. It would not be this because it's a different visit. And you can see here already, traffic source associated to a session, traffic source associated to a session. You don't see 2 traffic sources, right? It's just 1 traffic source per session. So very, very important. You cannot have multiple traffic sources per session. It is impossible. You cannot do that. All right. So here we've got session 1, session 2. Let's pretend they became a lead at this point. So then you're going to send them an email. So then let's pretend Infusionsoft, popular CRM out there for automation and emails. Let's say Infusionsoft, you're using Infusionsoft as a company, and you send out an email to all of your leads. And you say, hey, I've got this great offer, and it sends them directly to the cart. Okay, so it's a nice, simple offer, goes directly to the cart. So at that point, they click on the email. What caused the session to happen? Infusionsoft email did, right? Infusionsoft's email. So that caused the session to start. That's what analytics would be, a third visit, a third session here. The first page they see, the lander, would be the cart checkout. So they'd see the cart first. Now let's pretend that holy of holies, they actually bought, right? It worked. This whole thing worked. So now we've got this kind of customer journey, right? Again, this user number 1, 2, 3, all associated, different visits that the same user's making. And they're coming in through Google first, catch a couple of blog posts, they leave. You retarget them from Facebook. They come back, they read a blog post, they take a look at your offer, and they become a lead, but they don't actually buy it, and they leave. And then you bring them back through email, and email gets them to actually purchase, right? They're actually passing through credit card details, and we're making money here. So 3 visits, 1 user, 3 unique traffic sources per visit. So let's scroll down. Look at this. So let's talk about how these different platforms actually will attribute the traffic. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up a little bit so we can see. So we've got this goal that we're trying to figure out. Now we know the goal was really caused by Infusionsoft email. Okay, that was responsible for this. So in Google Analytics and in Facebook, the way to think about this is you have last click attribution, which is the last known attributable source of traffic. Okay, so that's the last click attribution. That's what it'll show in Google Analytics. You've got the first click attribution, which is like what's the thing that started the user in the first place. And then you've got assists, which is basically things in between. So let's plot this out. So if I wanted to say, okay, what was the last click for this goal, right? In this case, let's pretend it's a sale. Well, the last traffic source before the sale would be Infusionsoft. Okay, so Infusionsoft is our traffic attribution, and Google Analytics is going to attribute the sale to Infusionsoft. And so if you go into your e-commerce reports and you say, hey, tell me what traffic sources are causing that sale, it's going to say Infusionsoft does, because Infusionsoft did in fact cause the sale. But sometimes that's not really what you're asking. What you're asking is, should I keep doing this Facebook retargeting campaign, right? So what happens is in Google Analytics, you can go to another report called the Multichannel Funnel Reports, and there's a assisted conversions report. And you can say, well, before we talk about like Infusionsoft, and it's all well and good that Infusionsoft caused this, I want to see, did Facebook retargeting have anything to do with it? And in that report, it will tell you, yes, Facebook retargeting did in fact have something to do with that. So in Google Analytics, you can see those details. So let's pretend, for an example, this was a product worth $100. Somebody bought a $100 product from you. If you went into your Google Analytics and said, what caused this $100 sale? It would say Infusionsoft caused a $100 sale. And then in the multi-channel funnel reports, you would see something that says, you know what? But Facebook assisted in this $100 sale, which is kind of useful, right? Because now you're attributing a value and of an actual result and you can do this with goals and with e-commerce, it doesn't matter. But you can actually attribute now that Facebook had something to do with that, right? Because it is a necessary thing. Without Facebook, you wouldn't have gotten the lead. So then Google search, where does Google search come in? Well, in this example, Google search is actually the thing that got the whole thing underway, right? That's their very first traffic source. So Google search would be, again, Google Organic is what would show in Google Analytics, but Google search would be the first interaction. So you're searching on Google, then Facebook, which assists, and then Infusionsoft is the last click. And that is how it would attribute. So when you say last click, what actually caused the sale, Google Analytics will say Infusionsoft did. If you say, well, what was the first interaction? What traffic source was the very first one to cause that $100 sale? It would say, oh, well, Google search is the first interaction for that $100 sale. And then if you said, well, what traffic sources assist? It would say Google search and Facebook technically, because this is first interaction is kind of like an assist as well. It's before last click, but Facebook retargeting definitely will pop up in that. So you'll see Facebook retargeting as well. So this is the story according to Google. Now, what's the story according of this whole traffic thing, all right, this whole journey, according to Facebook? Well, Facebook retargeting in this case, and then we're going to be using Ads Manager as our example, not Facebook Analytics, but using Facebook Ads Manager, which is where most people are back there trying to see their conversions reports. And that's the thing that you're looking at going, man, this does not at all look like what Google Analytics is telling me is happening. So in Ads Manager, when you go back to your conversions, right, when this happens, there's no conversion. So there's nothing happening and there's no user and Facebook doesn't know anything. So none of this even exists to Facebook at all. Facebook starts tracking stuff, starts sort of paying attention to stuff right in here, right? Session number 2. So it comes in and it's creating session 2. It doesn't know that it's session 2 or any of that stuff. It just knows that now it's involved in the game. So Facebook retargeting, right? That is what's going to be attributed. That's what Facebook is going to claim credit for. Now, where does it claim credit? Does it claim credit as an assist? Does it claim credit as a first interaction, or does it claim credit as, hey, I was the one that caused it, which is kind of like last click, right? The one that caused it. And if you answered, it will claim credit as the one that caused it, you are completely right. It will. Because Facebook, the way that it works is different than Google Analytics. Remember, Google Analytics is a platform that is made to measure behavior. It is different. It is not made to report the results of your ad spend. And that's what Facebook Ad Manager is doing. So there's two completely different purposes these platforms have, and you really can't compare them apples to apples because they're built for different purposes. They're built to answer different questions, and the way that they answer those questions is completely different. They measure differently. So in the Google Analytics world, if you say, what caused the sale, right? What caused the sale, the traffic source right before the sale, it's going to say Infusionsoft because that's true. But Facebook's going to say, Facebook did it, I did it. And this is why you get Facebook Ads Manager that seems to over-report conversions all the time, right? Because what'll happen is when this ad shows up, when you have your Facebook retargeting ad first show up, there's like a clock that starts in Facebook. So what happens is that ad shows up and Facebook starts counting down the attribution window. And this is something you can adjust, but typically ballpark it to about 30 days. Okay, so you've got this 30-day attribution window, and anything that happens within that period of time, again, just roughly speaking, 30 days. So anything that happens in that period of time, if there's a conversion that can be tagged back to the people that came from this ad. So if this conversion happened 2 weeks later, right? If it happened 2 weeks later, it'll still get credit for this ad because the attribution window is there. So as long as it's within the attribution window of Facebook Ads Manager, it will claim Facebook got the credit. Now, interestingly enough, if you were also running Google Ads, if they clicked on the Google Ads, they would also say they got credit. And then both Facebook and Google Ads do this. All the ad platforms do this. So this is why you've got to be aware of how this works. The ads platforms also have something called view-through conversions, which is super sneaky. But view-through means if I'm on Facebook and I see your ad just sort of pass me on the way as I'm looking at cat pictures and photos and everything else that people spend on Facebook. So as your ad passes me by, that's a view, right? I may not have even been aware consciously that you exist, but Facebook's going to count that as a view of your ad. It goes against your CPM. So now I've viewed your ad. Now, when I view your ad, Facebook starts a clock. And it says, hey, anything within 24 hours of that view, I'm going to attribute back to the ad. So you can start seeing that Facebook is really looking for reasons, right? It's in its own best interest, admittedly, but it's there to figure out how to give itself credit as to what's going on, the results that are happening on your site. Google Analytics is a little more, I'd say, a useful version of the truth because it breaks out what's going on. It can see before, right, the journey happened, before the ad platform got involved. And AdWords, again, or Google Ads now, I should say, Google Ads does the same thing. So they will both do their best to claim credit for the results that are happening on your site. But if you have a bunch of leads, let's say you do a lot of email marketing, and so you've got a ton of leads, and you've uploaded a custom list to your Facebook campaign. So you've got this nice little custom audience of all your leads. And then you send a retargeting campaign for your big promotion you're doing on this day, whatever this random day is. You send this big promotion out and you're advertising to them, right? Doing Facebook retargeting and you're advertising to all of your people. And you send an email for that same promo. And you get a bunch of people that come in through the email and they buy. Facebook will claim view through conversions, and they'll say, hey, it was because of this ad, and this ad now has just made you $400,000 or whatever the revenue total was, and it will claim credit for all of that. And all of the attribution, it'll claim 100% attribution, right? And say, yeah, Facebook's up to everything. And so that's the challenge, right? Because you'll see in your back end of Ads Manager, it'll say, oh yeah, this campaign you spent $1,000 on, you just made $10,000. And then when you go back to Google and you say, well, hey, Google, what is Facebook doing, right? In terms of actual conversions, it'll be like Facebook's not doing anything in terms of last click, right? Which is kind of where most of the default reports are. Unless you go to multi-channel attribution, then you will see assists. Now, I want to show you this multi-channel attribution report because it's one of those things that you just don't know that you don't know, right? And it's also one of those things that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So I want you as a strategist to be aware that this report exists. So we're going to go into conversions. You go to multi-channel funnels. And we're making a lot of assumptions here that you've already got a great implementer and you've already implemented everything properly. You've got UTMs tracking and you've got a useful truth. Okay, we're going to assume all of that. So as we come through here in multi-channel funnels, this is the report we're talking about. This is assisted conversions report. So I'm going to flip over to that. The very first thing you want to do is tell it, okay, what results should I be looking for? Like in this report, before you get into anything else, what results should I be looking for? So you come to conversion. We're going to say in this case, I don't want to see any of the goals, though clearly you could do that. I just want to see the transactions, right? In this case, just e-commerce transactions. So we're going to apply. It's now just going to show us the e-commerce transactions and that's it. Now, when I come down, you see by default, it groups them by channel. And this is somewhat useful, but a lot of times, especially in these other reports, like acquisition reports and source medium reports, you're actually looking at the real traffic source names, right? Not the general the channel that they're in, but the actual name. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to click where it says source medium. And now you've got something that's probably familiar to you. Remember we said Google search, right? Comes across as Google organic. So there's our Google search. This is our paid Google right there. So we've got some ads traffic coming through. And so very quickly, I can see Google organic assisted in 45 different transactions for a total of 5,000. It was not the last known click before these transactions occurred, but it did assist in $5,000. And in addition, it was, in fact, the last click on another 41 or $4,800, right? So now I know what is that? Almost 10 grand of sales I can roughly attribute to this channel. CPC, same thing. So Google Organic. In this case, it's assisting, Google Ads, I should say. Google Ads, it's assisting in 3,500 sales and it's responsible for 1,000. Right? Directly responsible for 1,000. It was the last known click before these 11 transactions occurred, but it assisted in another 20 somewhere along the journey. Right? And then we've got display and 5 and 3, et cetera, et cetera. So you can kind of, by adding these things together, you can kind of get an overall idea of how the source medium itself, kind of its sum total. And occasionally, if the stars are with you, if the planets align, you will actually see, maybe if you had Facebook back here and you look at Facebook Ads Manager, sometimes these totals actually kind of add up if it's right date range. And you can kind of get an idea of the trend and say, okay, yeah, I see, Facebook's claiming 100% credit, but really Google's saying, well, of the $30,000 they say they sold, 10,000 was really truly theirs and another 20,000 they assisted in. And you will see things like that. So that's one way to use this report. The other thing to look at is this top conversions path. Now this is one of those rabbit hole reports for sure. But this shows you it gives you an idea of interactions. And we talked about first interaction and assists and, last click and all that other stuff. So if you go down we're going to go to source medium here and you can see the actual path that different transactions had. So you can see there's 15 conversions that basically said, hey, I'm going to come from the Googleplex, and then they bought. Let's do other ones. Let's do, here's Google CPC. So we have that right there. So there's paid traffic from Google, and then they bought more paid traffic from Google, and they came back a couple of times directly, right? And then buying. So we see that. Let's do organic here. I'm going to type in organic. We're going to shorten this down so we can see all the organics. So there's all organic. So some came in from, 9 of these came through. $800 were just basically organic and then came back through a bookmark or some other way. Same thing here. Now, again, if you see a ton of direct none and you're not seeing email and you do a lot of email, that's because you're not tagging your traffic. And you got to go back and make sure you're with your implementation team that your traffic is being religiously tagged from email, because otherwise you won't see that. And that could very well be the case for this one, right? So if Google Organic, something brought them back. Maybe they typed you in directly into their browser. Maybe they bookmarked you, but you might not be that popular. And so it could just be other untagged traffic sources that are causing all this direct none. So here we've got Google Organic Direct, came back again, CPC, then they did a search, then they came in. And you can kind of get an idea of how these are working, right? CPC saw a couple of different ads and that caused sessions. Each one of these little tags is a session that happened. And then Google Organic, and then they came back directly, with some untagged traffic. And that's, if you see a lot of this, a lot of times, again, it could be them typing it in, or it's in the browser in the cache or something, but a lot of times it's email, especially if you do a lot of email marketing. So these are just some of the things to play around with. I want you to know that they exist, know that they are there, and that you can play with them. And this is how the platforms, the very, very big differences on how platforms like Google Analytics sees traffic like this. And that's how it attributes what gets credit for what. But Google Analytics, again, has this additional layer of where it was in the journey, which is kind of cool. It's nice that it does that. So at least you can somewhat compare apples to apples. The ads platforms, we're using Facebook as an example here, but all of them kind of operate like this. The ads platforms, it's their job to claim credit. It's their job to say, we're the one that caused the sale, which is the last click. Remember, that's sort of like the last known attributable source. So they're going to say, we caused the sale. They don't care about any of this stuff. It's not for them to care about that stuff. They want credit. So you will very likely see if there was a $100 sale that happened here, and it was exactly this thing. Let's pretend ads was in the middle. Google Ads was in the middle somewhere. You would see Infusionsoft getting credit in analytics. You would see Facebook Ads Manager telling you Facebook did it. You would see Google Ads telling you Google did it. And then, of course, Google Analytics saying, no, it was really the email, which is why it's so important to tag your traffic, because you get a more useful truth when you use analytics for this purpose. All right, so again, happy to answer any questions you have over this. We really just wanted to give you an overview, a really basic overview of how the different platforms see the exact same situation and why they are reporting so wildly different results most of the time. If you have questions specific to your situation, you want to send something over, just hit the Ask an Instructor button. As an Academy member, you have access to that, and so I want to make sure that you take advantage of it as often as possible. And of course, you also have the Facebook group. Now, with those of you on the workshop, hopefully you got at least one thing here, one new idea, one new concept, maybe you heard something in a slightly different way that made a little more sense this time. If you need a better way to know your numbers, I would heavily encourage you to join Measurement Marketing Academy. It is where you will know your numbers, trust your numbers, grow the numbers. We have a ton of workshops back there, but more than that, more than the actual knowledge that we help you get and provide and integrate, more than that is the support. So we have a tremendous amount of hand-holding support that's back there. There's Ask an Instructor. There's office hours. There's a ton of support because this stuff is overwhelming. And sometimes you need somebody to be able to talk it through. And we're all measurement marketers. We're all back there doing this stuff every day in our case, for a wide variety of clients as well. So it's worth having a little fresh pair of eyes sometimes to talk something through, and that's what our Academy members are able to do. All right. If you are an Academy member at 3:30 Eastern today, this is on Wednesday, so we record these live Wednesdays. So at 3:30 p.m. Eastern today, we are going to start office hours. So make sure that you check in the Academy for your link. You can also check in the Facebook members area for those that are Academy members and do that. And of course, your email. We send out emails Tuesdays for that. So you should see that in your email as well. And I hope to chat with you in what is at this point just a few minutes from 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Next week, little programming note, next week's topic, it's what's new is our topic. And we're going to be covering the updates and features that were released in September of 2018. And when we talk about updates and features, it's the things that changed in analytics, Tag Manager, Data Studio, Facebook Analytics, because this stuff changes all the time. So every single month, the first Wednesday of every month, in our case, we actually cover an update section. We go through all the different changes so you can get caught up. You can make sure maybe you're not taking advantage of a brand new feature that would make things 1,000 times easier. And the worst reason to not take advantage of it is because you didn't know, right? So we got to make sure we keep you in the know, and that's what next week's workshop will be all about, to get you nice and caught up. If you are not yet on our list for those notifications and those topics, make sure you join Workshop Wednesday. Just go to measure.tip/WW, and it will take you there so you can learn all about this program, which is Workshop Wednesday and completely free. All right, that is it. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you so much. This has been Strategy Session, how traffic attribution works. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we will catch you on the next one. Take care.